right, welcome, John Paul Rice. We are live here at Meetings with Masters, and I'm so honored and grateful that you are here tonight. Thank you.
Tina, thanks so much for having me on. It's a real pleasure.
It is really an honor to have you here. You are an incredible independent filmmaker. You are an actor in literally my favorite movie, one of my favorite movies of all times, Remember the Titans, which I watched with my kids for years, and I still love it. So, and many other movies, which I want to hear just all about, sort of, where you've been and how you've come to where you are now in your life, because you're making really important, independent films that I think that people are embracing and need to see. And I would like to hear, your story and what was the pivotal moment in your life that brought you up, that sort of woke you up to the darkness that you're kind of uncovering too. So you start where you will. And
yeah. Well, I mean, just kind of a quick background for those who don't know.
Yes.
I was in Atlanta 20-something years ago, and I had graduated high school, was going to Georgia State for college, and had business on my mind. And I was a salesman at a young age, and took an elective course in the history of motion cinema, and it changed my life. I had done football, baseball, basketball, playing as a kid, was into the arts. I loved painting. I did do theater, and something happened in the course of that second year of school that a little spark went off, and I ended up getting into an acting class again. And I shadowed it and did really well. I liked, what I was doing. It felt good. It felt good to create. And that instructor had told us about a new Denzel Washington movie that was coming into Atlanta to film, called Remember the Titans. And the casting director, local casting director, he had a relationship with. So me and a handful of other students went over there, got an audition. 2 days later, they call up, say, we'd love for you to, play one of the Titan football players. You're going to be one of the core group. And we need to know, are you available for the next, month and a half? And I said, yeah. Oh yeah. I was excited as hell. Left school at that time. I suspended my classes, just went with it, just followed it. And the whole experience of filming it, being there with Denzel, being there with the actors, getting to know Ryan Hurst, who played Bertier, the guy who played Julius Campbell, Wood Harris, Craig Kirkwood, who played Rev, Kip Perdue, who played Sunshine, Ryan Gosling. You're with them every day, and you're seeing how a movie works. It's not just fun, but it's work. And you either love it or you don't. But as a 22-year-old man back then, I was, I had stars in my eyes, of course, like anybody I think would. Yeah. But it propelled me to go out there for the premiere. I spent 4 days. I had met a film director in Atlanta who lived out there through a mutual contact. And I said, nope, I got to be here. And within 3 months later, I was driving out with everything in my car and a floor to sleep on, and no job, and $500 in my wallet with 2 credit cards.
Wow.
And, it was just a leap of faith, I guess, for a 22-year-old to have a leap of faith, but with stars in their eyes. So that kind of got me out here. But coming into where we're at now, and working in the industry at a startup that ended up blowing up. They did JUNO, the GRUDGE, Harold and Kumar. I want to make clear for anybody who's watched, and there's been numerous, we'll get to the viral video in a minute, but there's been numerous things where I mentioned that in the video, but people are taking it that I'm a producer of JUNO, and I never said that. I worked for the company that did it. I got to see the day-to-day over 4.5 years, how movies are financed, distributed, sold, produced, creatively developed, marketed, And I read scripts, I answered phones. I mean, it wasn't like, you know, I was like the high guy on the totem pole. I was the starter like everybody else starts, and you just move your way up. And then at the same time, I was trying to produce my own movies, these big budget films. When I say bigger budget, like at that time, you know, between $3 and maybe $10 million was a lot. That was considered low budget independent film according to the studios. But I had a couple of those projects. I made enormous amount of relationships in the industry. Warner Brothers, Universal, not the Universal, the company. Like there would be like people at Universal. So you'd have the creative developer or the executive. I mean, it's a diversification of labor. But we met with top people at Fox. We met with top people at Jerry Bruckheimer. And I was 25 years old, and I was just like, oh my God, this is possible. And it was. But a series of events occurred over 4 years. We didn't get any movies made. And we lost the financing for a movie literally over a weekend because one of the stars we were working with to attach, her manager, her agent, her lawyer, and a whole bunch of other people like fired her for whatever reason. I don't know to this day. And that put us in a moment of, okay, we need to make a movie. And out of that came a movie called 1 Hour Fantasy Girl, which is based on a true story about a young girl working in a motel room in Hollywood where she does any fantasy a guy wants as long as there's no sex, no nudity, is 100% legal. And it came at a time right before the financial crisis of 2008. We were a massive success on Amazon. Our DVD sales, our ratings before they started throttling content down, but independent films, we were up there with, at the time, Brokeback Mountain, The King's Speech, and drama. I took screenshots. We were in the top like 300 movies out of 40,000 titles. Wow. And it was this beautiful story about a young girl trying to traverse through this dangerous world of people who are trying to draw from her strength, that they lacked discipline and strength, and they used her as a vehicle to express themselves honestly and yet at the same time take from her. And she was this shut off woman who, you know, in the motel room, she was the fantasy girl, and outside of it, she was just plain Jane. You know, she wore long baggy t-shirts. She didn't like exposing her body. She wanted a way out, and she was kind of what you would call an F up because she really wasn't focused and she couldn't sleep. And it all related to this issue of abuse that she had endured as a child from her mother, who burned her with cigarettes, and her father or her stepdad, who may have molested her. And it became this movie that women surprisingly found and were moved by, because it was a fighter, but in the most gentle and beautiful way. It was all about that one break that somebody gives you in the most critical moment, turns you to give you a chance at another day of surviving in a new direction. Right. And so that experience, the reason why I took the time to describe that is that experience changed me 12 years ago, because it started me down this path that I didn't know I was on, that reflects in all of our movies now a truth about movies that Hollywood typically doesn't do, not because of the budget, but because of the story and because of the subject matter. That is not, I mean, Hollywood has no problem with sex. So it had nothing to do with kink or fetish. It had to do with the fact that this is a very personal story, and it doesn't glamorize the world. It shows you violence that's not glorified. It shows you the consequences of violence. And yet at the same time, there's this tenderness that comes through. And so moving through all of this, we did 1 Hour Fantasy Girl, The Magic Stone, Memories of a Lost Love, which was about child abuse in the home and the mental health that affects. And as I moved forward in the movies that I did another one called A Nice Quiet Life, about two college students that fall in love 1 year before graduation until one of them develops schizophrenia. And I started hitting a wall in Hollywood around probably between 2012 and 2015. I saw that we were not diversified enough according to what Hollywood wanted representation in their movies. Even though I may have had an actor, a black actor, or a Hispanic actor, they were judging the merits of our movie off of the diversity that was necessary to serve audiences. I know that they believe that, the people that I talked to, but the people that saw our film said there aren't movies like yours in Hollywood. There's not movies like yours in independent film. All of the social issues were kind of like, gay, racism. It's all of the, people call it political, but it is political, but it's used politically, but it really has to do with issues that are social, but that are contentious and require identity politic to sort of like us versus the good people, us versus the bad people. We're good people, we're virtuous, these people are bad. And everything started to, I was still a Democrat. I was still, well, let me just say this. I was still considered myself and identified as a liberal, identified as later as a progressive, to separate myself from what I was seeing on the neoliberal side. And really what I didn't understand was that it's all one and the same, at least as it's messaged. And when I got into the election of Donald Trump, for which prior to that, I followed all of the primary of Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton and saw the fraud that was going on there. I actually got a programmer and a coder to download the real-time results, and will tell you that Bernie Sanders won that primary with 70% of the vote, of the real vote, of the true vote. They shot themselves in the foot. He was originally there. I kind of want to talk about this for a second. He was originally there in that agreement that he had with her to take Obama's 2012 disaffected voter coalition, because Obama in 2008, this is a man I voted for twice. In 2008, he had a massive coalition. In 2012, their election strategy, this is well documented in a couple of articles from insiders who were working in the campaign, they completely abandoned independence altogether in 2012. A lot of it had to do with Occupy Wall Street. And so they were just going to focus on getting the base out in the face of Romney. And Romney was a controlled opposition anyway. But by 2015, the agreement that Sanders' campaign had to run with Hillary Clinton was his job was to capture all of those disaffected liberals and the progressives from the Obama days and keep them and then push them back into voting for her. And what happened is that the narrative got away from them, such to the point that that's why you had the insurgency of Sanders and the insurgency of Trump. It wasn't exclusive to the, quote, conservative or the right side. It was the whole system was effed up. People felt it, were looking for somebody who could fix it, because they had the conservative side of that equation was that George Bush and Dick Cheney were there to destroy the Republican Party and the Republican brand. It was neocons that took it over. You had, 9/11, George Bush ran on a non-interventional foreign policy. That's why the race was even close, because of the Clinton years and all of our foreign interventions. There was other reasons for that too, other than character. But he and Cheney basically did the opposite of that from 9/11 on with the legal wars. And then we bookend those 8 years with a financial collapse, which hands it right over to the false illusion of choice, which I now know was Barack Obama. And if it was Hillary Clinton, it would have been a false choice as well. Right. But Bernie Sanders was there, and I watched all that happen, and I fought for it. I even went to Jane Sanders. I presented her the fact-based evidence. And there was a guy in there that said, John, I just want you to know, look, if you're going to go out there and fight for this thing, understand that there are very ruthless people in this world.
Mm.
And he said,
this was in the Bernie camp. This was in the Sanders camp.
This was a guy who knew Bernie, who had learned of the rigging of our machines and our the rigging of our elections has been going on for a very long time. It has very little to do with foreign influence as its message to you. Mm. But it's been going on for a very long time, and it's accelerated over the last, let's say, 10 years in all phases. So the only way that you can really win elections in the past was to overcome the fraud. And so, which means drive turnout beyond what their models predict. So what happened was, when we're there and I'm watching all of this as a filmmaker, I'm destroyed personally, because I had identified with Sanders and I didn't see, socialism, communism, or any of that stuff. I just saw a populist, and I saw him in the face of Hillary Clinton, and I didn't even know all of the level of monstrosity of her and what she had done. But I knew that I knew enough, right? I knew the hypocrisy, and I saw the media gaslighting Sanders people and lying, just outright lying. When Trump gets elected, I lose my mind.
Right.
And I'm terrified. And I'm with my girlfriend, who's an Arab. My girlfriend was an Arab. She's a Muslim at the time in 2016. She's like, no, we love him. I was like, what? I was like, this guy is like talking about banning you out of the country, blah, blah, blah. Because I bought all of what CNN was telling me about all the negatives of him. And I didn't see any of his press conferences, nothing. I just thought it was a joke. Like I didn't see that what they were doing to Sanders is what they were also doing to Trump. And here's the thing, that from that night on, I kept watching everything unfold up until the inauguration. And by the time they had come out with the Russiagate story, I knew that was BS as soon as it came out, because I knew enough about data security and the NSA. So I follow all this, I watch it happen, and then I start seeing what Trump says and what the press says, and what Trump does and what the press says he does. And then I started going back in history. I started looking back at the debates from 1992 with Perot standing up there, knowing what I knew between these two monsters, Bush and Clinton. One and the same. They're one and the same, guys. They're not different. And if you just go back and look at history of Bill Clinton involvement in Arkansas with the CIA and the drug running, that's enough to get you started. There is more there than you ever will have time to go through. Anyway, I just started learning about our history and this wave, what got Trump elected. That was the first thing I had to answer, because the racism, the xenophobia and all that, and even Sanders, before he sold out completely, was telling people, no, he spoke to the pain of people. He just called him a con man. And you can believe he's a con man. I don't care. But the thing is that it wasn't about the narrative of the racism, the xenophobia, all that they had done with Brexit as well. It had to do with other issues. And so what I wanted to know was how this all came together. And I ended up going back in history over 100 years to the formation of the central bank, the assassination of JFK, our two world wars, which were totally staged, our Vietnam War, which was totally staged, the 60s, which was a creation of the CIA. That includes the drug scene, the music, all of it. It was like fake news, no, fake history.
Wow.
And then it gets even crazier, where you start looking into the history of Marxism, and you find out that Karl Marx was hanging around with a bunch of devil worshippers. And it's like what we're seeing now is the culmination of this whole momentum that has been building to this time. And there's reasons for it, and we'll get into that. But anyway, I only know like half of what I'm telling you at the time, but I could detect that there was something wrong. And then I come across human trafficking of kids. And
what period of that? Like, where did you see it? Was it the period of, was it back then with that Satanism that you were?
No, that part is just kind of like, that was weird. And I sort of like just put it aside for a second because I said, I don't know. Like I hear this stuff about you hear about the occult, you hear about Satan worship, Luciferian. Okay. That was kind of like back here on the periphery. I'm still trying to learn about like events of, all the details of World War II, like where the Bushes, the Prescott Bush, this is Bush Sr.'s father,
Gotcha.
DuPont, the DuPont family, the Rockefellers, J.P. Morgan Chase are all funding both sides of the equation. Shell Gas Company is giving fuel to the German tank, so that the German tanks can roll through Europe. And you're just going, what in the hell? How do all of these people give us this war and fund both sides of it because it serves the purpose? The war. See, these are things that are planned out in order to advance agendas that are beyond what we see. They're expressed politically, and we sign this treaty, and we hold these hearings, but it's already been decided, like long before any of this takes place, at least up until recently.
Okay.
But this was going on decade after decade, year after year, moment after moment, event after event. And it brought me back to 9/11. It brought me back to the financial crash. It brought me back to all the knowledge that I had learned in the banking institutions. And I started to see a picture coming together that led me to Ronald Bernard's testimony. It was a 5-part series on Dutch media television. And the first part of it was his talking about moving up through the system, layer by layer, to where he got up to the very top. And this is money market manipulation. I mean, there's currency wars, there's all the wars that are planned out, the things that Wall Street doesn't even know. They want to, for example, in the Middle East, you can say what you want to about 9/11. You get over in the Middle East, you launch an illegal war, but really you have secondary, I mean, it's not secondary agendas. There's multiple agendas with that, which if you just look at 1 + 1, what did they end up doing? They destroyed 6,000 years worth of culture. They destroyed the culture of the people over there, for which then creates the refugee crisis, for then which creates the immigration crisis. They create and sow all of the SHIT into the world in order for them to gain more control, more power, and it has financial impacts, power impacts. It's like this. You'd have to believe that all of where we're at is an accident.
Yeah, that's
right. That these incredible minds running the thing are just, they're trying so hard to help. And yet they just keep making mistake after mistake after mistake, even though they're the ones running everything. Okay.
Oh, it's just beyond. So go on. Yes, please.
Right. So I get into this thing about human trafficking. We're looking for our next movie. Edgar, my business partner, is over in Australia trying to get other projects started because we're still trying to figure out a way to get out of America because, we're not sure about Trump. We're hearing good things from certain people, and I'm like, I don't know what you're seeing, how you can see what I see, but I started listening and evaluating for myself, right? But this is bigger than Trump. This is why, when you throw out a name like that, everybody pulls back and you're like, okay, you're completely invalidated and discredited. This is not about him. This is not about him. This has to do with something much, much bigger, which I'm going to get into. When I got into human trafficking of kids, not only were there many sleepless nights between me and Edgar, there was a realization that, okay, you have girls out there on the street working, women, 18 and above. You have girls who are, selling their body for money, bad, but this other level with kids, and I'm talking about infant babies and little children, and most of us cannot conceive of ever doing such a thing to a child. I mean, not even imagining that somebody could do that to a baby.
No.
So here's what got me. I said, okay, we're going to make a movie. Edgar said, I've got our next movie. We were already talking about it. And it came together so fast, and we were in production within 3 months. And I didn't know what I was really coming into for myself personally, that I would be where I'm at. I mean, if you had told me 3 years ago this is where I'd be like, okay, that's possible, but really crazy.
Right.
But we have a problem that is our problem. I want to make this clear.
Yeah.
Because this problem cannot be solved by the people who created it, number one.
Right.
This problem cannot be solved through the people who live, act, and feel this way. Because whatever the issue is in them, it's a failure in the programming of the brain that does not allow them to have empathy. It does not allow them to have self-reflection. There's no changing these people. And when I'm talking about these people, what I mean this is not about pedophilia, which is horrific and ugly. What creates it, what creates a pedophile, and what creates a victim is child abuse. This other level are people who are consciously aware of what they are doing. Traumatized people who are so far gone from the reality of you and I, their only thing is the television for which they can imitate behavior and program you. Because that's how they study. There's still most are still human beings inside. I know that's so hard to imagine. That's not we need to give them a pass or an excuse for anything that they do. But they have all the features of what they were supposed to be when they were born. Right. What these people do in the upper echelons beyond the faces on the stage is they torture their children from the moment they're born and before. For example, in the Illuminati, I'm going to say it very clearly, in the Illuminati family, this is straight from Jay Parker. You can look up his work. He's done extensive work on this. The mother, when the child is born and opens its eyes, the mother frowns at it to imprint that negative vibrational energy into the child's brain so that the person that it's bonding with, for which the child does within the first minutes of its conscious life out of the womb, it will begin to imprint that negative energy into the subconscious mind for which the child's entire reality will come into existence. They torture their children. You've heard of MK Ultra. I wouldn't call that dissociative disorder, which we would categorize today, where you have fractured minds. alters, altered personalities. They pride themselves on the children who can whose minds they can fracture the most. And it disassociates them from their true self. And it allows them to, I mean, look, people think this is conspiracy. I just tell people, go look on YouTube at the 10 laws of the subconscious mind and tell me how your mind isn't programmed from birth to now. Your subconscious mind does not make decisions. Your subconscious mind does not know what's the difference between what is real and what is imagined. It treats it the same. Those are just 2 of the 10 rules.
Right.
So, and every person, every human being follows this. Every human being. So you create these sociopaths and these psychopaths who don't have empathy, who take pleasure in deceiving because they're very clever, and some are very intelligent. Many of them are extremely intelligent, such to the level of their genius. They run our institutions, like somebody like Bill Gates will run our health care. He will run the WHO. He will finance the pharmaceutical industry. He's like a nexus. He's like, in a different way, he's like Jeffrey Epstein, but for that industry. And that's not about him doing blackmail. I'm saying he is a controller, a node on that network where everything flows in and out of and around. And Bill Gates was closely associated with Jeffrey Epstein, as shown in the New York Times, which is a whitewashed article, but they couldn't avoid the fact that there were years of him and his closest associates and Epstein's closest associates working together over years. They even talked about running, if it's true, $100 million women's charity. Now, my question is, look, you'd go, oh, well, Bill Gates, he's trying, and all this. Like, no, he's not. This is one of the most powerful men on the world stage that you and I know, who has access to everyone. And in this world, you have to be invited in. You don't just get paired up with a pedophile randomly and don't know about it. Everybody in that world knows each other. Cindy McCain said everybody knew what Jeffrey Epstein was doing and who he was. So, yeah. So it's ugly. It's an ugly truth, but it's one that has to be told if we're going to stop doing this to ourselves. We have to get rid of all of this cognitive dissonance, these contradictions, where we're holding up what's presented to us on TV as sacrosanct, and you don't even know who these people are in their real lives. The television imprints with emotion your trust in these people. It is used that way. They know your mind better than you do, period. So I'm learning all this. It's hard. We make the movie 2017. We released it in 2018. There was an experience in releasing that for which I reached out to every major company, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, all the heads, radio silence, to invite them to the premiere. The more shocking one was the fact that I had reached out to every human trafficking organization in Los Angeles. Nobody responded. And I didn't reach out one time. I reached out multiple times, including Thorn, which is the one that Ashton Kutcher runs. They came back, they actually responded via email 2 months ahead of the premiere, saying, gave me some bureaucratic administrative response saying, we're going to be busy during that time. Couldn't send anybody there, didn't offer anything of support. I didn't care. At that point, I was like, I realized, I already knew that NGOs and 501c3s were totally controlled through the government, and most of them were front shell organizations. I'm not accusing them of that. I'm just saying that just look into the Red Cross, look into the UN, you will see a lot of corruption there that is not by accident. There's fraud going on in our charitable organizations of the highest levels. I assume that is going to change very, very soon, because The Clinton Foundation, look, the Clinton Foundation alone, Charles Ortel audited them properly and found hundreds of millions of dollars just going in and being a money laundering operation for their dark, like raising money for the AIDS initiative. It's a total scam. The whole damn thing is a scam. The whole thing.
Whole AIDS initiative.
The whole thing. The Clinton Global Initiative is a scam. And the mainstream media protected them anytime there was a question about this charity being audited. And they said, no, they've been very transparent, forthright. Look, I had to unlearn everything that I had believed in. And that's not easy. But the other side of this was coming into now where I am. Doing a movie on human trafficking forced me to confront my own child abuse issues. And I'd been well aware of them to a degree, but I hadn't really healed from them or begun to heal from them. That's a better way of putting it. Where I had to cry them out, like deeply, like where I went back to when I was 3 years old and I shrunk. My mind, I was there. I was not aware of where I was. And I let it all out. My face tightened and convulsed in a way that it was literally remembering all of that trauma and having the strength to do it. And then the wall fell. People talk about triggers, and I'm not putting them down. I'm just saying you don't want to live your life this way. You don't want to live your life in a constant state of coping. But there are real key techniques that can be done. And we'll get to those, one of them being EFT and matrix re-imprinting. But this confrontation of my own abuse and what happened last year with, I would call it, you could sum it up in one word, like a spiritual growth, spiritual development, where I really began to get back in touch with my body, the love that I could begin to feel. I could actually start seeing a future. I could feel the potential of what a future wife would be like and the love that I would have for her. I could imagine it, and it came very vividly and strongly, because what had happened was all of my fear, my deepest fears that were unconscious to me, yet expressed through my anger and disconnect from other people, prevented me from enjoying the real love that I was born with as a beautiful baby into this world. Yeah. And that's what all of us deserve. Every human being born on this planet deserves to be loved. They deserve it. Not have to earn it, not have to work for it. They deserve it.
They're born to be loved.
They're born hardwired. Children are not born. Look, if you think children are born selfish, look at yourself in the mirror. Because that baby has what they call healthy narcissism for a very good reason. It needs you 24/7 to live. Yes. The child, when it's born, is in a psychedelic state of mind. It's in a theta and delta brainwave state the first 7 years of his life. And you just look it up. Just look up alpha and beta. You're in those most of the days you're woken, but a child is not. And so what that means is they're 100% programmable. That means that operating system, that subconscious mind, is the computer, and you are loading programs on it, consciously and unconsciously. When a mother speaks to that child, her words are literally speaking divine existence divine reality into existence in that brain. Right. The neurons, the synapses, all of that being connected by the vibrational frequency that's coming from your voice. So if your intent is to harm some child and you're trying to, quote, correct them, but you're angry, you're putting fear into that kid. Right. Whether you mean to or not. And that's not to say you're a bad person and you need, but you just need to be aware of what you're doing to your kids and all children that you're around, really. They're divine beings of light. They come from a creator of heaven and earth. This is not, I'm telling you this because I don't care what your beliefs are, religious or otherwise, spiritual or otherwise. Know that on the dark side of this equation, for which we'll talk about, human trafficking is a symptom of a much bigger dark force in the world. And those people that do this to kids, little babies, know very much what we are, and that's why they do it. They serve a dark god, a satanic, devil-worshiping cabal that is not just about self, it's to this higher dimensional power that they channel through their bodies, and they use it to feed off of the fear and terror that they give that kid, and it gives them power. I'm not making this up. You guys can, if you want to look at it, it's pretty ugly, but this is what they believe, and they even say that. They even talk about how they go into neighborhoods, and the Satanists who are in this country right now go into neighborhoods to trick away everyone from believing in a creator of heaven and earth, and definitely keep them away from Jesus. That gives them the ability to put the drugs in there, the prostitution, get the gangs going, and off we go to the races. And it creates all this negative energy that they use in their dark magic, their black magic. Hillary Clinton went down to Port-au-Prince, Haiti. This is in the Port-au-Prince paper. It was banned from the United States. You can go to Washington Post in 2016. They acknowledge this, so this is not made up. She went down there in the 70s and then again in the 90s when Bill was running to do voodoo and black magic ceremonies. And if you look into voodoo, voodoo usually involves demon possession. It involves animals, and black magic gets into ritual blood sacrifice of living beings. She did that. She was down there, not once, not twice, several times.
And there's proof.
And there's proof of that. And it's acknowledged in the Washington Post. Again, they'll give you the nice veneer of it. The cover.
I was going to say, is it the fake version or the,
no,
you know?
But this is a much, these were all the things that I learned, and it forced me to confront that part of myself that I had not yet healed or begun to heal. And so when I did, I became happier and stronger and more courageous, and what you would describe as more courageous and brave, but not because it was a thought like I'm brave and I'm courageous, but it brought me back to my father, who had done horrific abuse to me as a child. My father and I never really knew each other. He left me when I was 4. 7 years ago, I had a lot of anger issues where I'd walk out onto a street and I'd be waiting for this, in LA, most of the drivers are very selfish, rude. I mean, you could say that. Some of them are. But I had the crosswalk on, and these cars would just start coming right at me, like turning right into me. And I got so mad. I would get so amped up with anger. I was fantasizing where they almost hit me, and I would grab that driver out of the car and beat the living crap out of them.
Oh my God.
That was like, I was hardwired and primed to do that. And I said, you know what? This is kind of crazy because this is all in my head, right? Yeah. And I'm actually creating this feeling in myself. And I sought out books and therapy. I read Alice Miller's Drama of the Gifted Child, For Your Own Good. And then I came to The Body Never Lies. Mm-hmm. And there was a passage in there where I finished reading it, and I had an instant flash of anger because the passage I had read spoke directly to my childhood, to a T. And in this image, which I hadn't premeditated, it just came in there. It was my dad when he was younger, when I was a kid, tied up, gagged, bloodied, and me with 2 electrodes ready to electrocute him, excited to kill him.
Oh.
And I didn't run from that.
Right.
And I pursued it, and I went into therapy to do this certain technique that I'd heard about. I can't recall what it is, but it induces REM, rapid eye movement, sleep state, and you go back into a memory. And I saw what had happened to me.
EMDR. Is it EMDR?
EMDR, yeah, it's EMDR. I did EMDR. I saw what had happened to me, and that was the beginning of 7 years ago to now, a journey to become free. But when my dad this last year, he had been hospitalized in late 2018 for 8 weeks. He had a pneumonia in ICU, and he went back, and I just knew that there was nobody to take care of him, and I lived far away. And he started developing dementia over last summer, pretty well pronounced. His neighbor noticed, he let me know. And I would talk to my father, and he and I, what I did was I dealt with him in the present as best I could. If I didn't want to talk to him for whatever reason, I didn't, if I didn't feel it. But something happened to me last year, which when I started conquering this child abuse, I was able to open up and actually care about him and love him. And when Christmas came around last December, my friend, my very good friend who had given me the advice to deal with him in the present moment, which had helped prior, said, you need to go see him because this might be the last time you see him alive. And I got on a plane, I went and saw him and spent 5 days with him. And it was the best 5 days I've ever had with this man. I was there for him. And I let him talk, and out of it came a really beautiful child. And he still had all his features of his grumpiness and everything else.
You mean him as the child, the beautiful child?
Yeah, this giving person came out of him that was not virtuous in his giving. It was, he had someone with him who was not adding their crap to the situation and demanding that fatherly love that he never gave me, but being a man in front of my father, man to man, and yet listener for him. And the giving that came out of him and the peace and the beautiful moments I had with him. I remember when I said goodbye, I shook his hand. I said, we'll have to do it another time. And he just looked at me with this joy in his face, and he says, oh yeah. And he shook my hand, and I went in to hug him, and I almost just lost it right there. Because that was the closest thing I ever had to that affection that I wanted so bad since being a little boy.
Do you feel like, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
You had compassion for him. It sounds to me like you had compassion in that moment.
It was compassion that was not pity. It was unconditional love for a man who was at the end of his life, as helpless as I was as a child. And I wanted to be there for him. I wanted to be with him, have fun with him, listen to all of his stories that he wanted to tell, even though these were stories that he had told before and he'd forgotten. And when I left, I cried my eyes out in the car, but I knew that there was something beautiful that had taken place, and I didn't know it wasn't over yet. It was a week later, I got a call. He had begun declining 2 days after I'd left, his health. and his mental state. And he was in the hospital because he had fractured his back laying down. And they brought him in for x-rays, and it turns out he had cancer that had metastasized. So it was four or five tumors spread all over his body. And a week later, he was in hospice. And I was with him the last 3 days of his life. And I am so grateful I got to be there with him to give him that.
Wow.
Because you don't go through this life without suffering in some way. And you realize as you get older, if you look at the suffering of yourself and what you did unaware of what you were doing, really, because you have to ask yourself, does a man do what he did to his children and his family and him, ultimately himself, because he wants to? Because he's aware of the fact that this life that he came from, of money, of education, of high athletic ability and accomplishment in creating a company that now is worth over $22 million in annual revenue a year, and he dies with no money in his bank account alone. And the other thing is, it's like, if you knew where you were headed, would you go down there? But the other side of it was that our childhoods were identical to each other.
Yeah.
Because what created him was what created me. And I was able to do what he couldn't. And so I was in a position to give him that space to have somebody care for him at the end of his life, because he needed that. And I wanted him to be able to die with a sense of dignity, and there was love given. And there was a lot of things that happened that day. The last day, when I walked in that morning on the third day, he was out. He was just breathing through his mouth and his stomach, which means his lungs weren't working anymore, or they were shutting down, and the rest of his body was shutting down, and he wasn't responsive to anything we said to him. He was out. His eyes were, there was a lot of fluid and yellow under his eyes. I mean, he was closed, but almost coma state. And I'll never forget this. I had done a lot of stuff that day. It was a blur. And I ended up sitting in front of him. And my good friend, Edgar, my business partner, had told me, he said, next time you're in front of him, just touch his forehead for me. And I said a little Our Father in my heart for him. And then I said, if you want to go, go. And I'll never forget this. I had a notification on my phone. I looked down, and it's from a friend of mine who had said, hey, I wanted to share this memory with you from 5 years ago today. That was a video of her father who had passed away. And it was her dad arriving at the airport, getting out of the car, surprising the mom and daughter. And there was this beautiful exchange of a hug and love. And as soon as I finished that, I put it down and I looked up right then and there as I was holding my dad's hand, and he was looking right at me as he was dying. And it was a really beautiful thing. That experience from there on has brought me to now, which is this person who has seen how you could transform yourself in ways that you don't know today.
Do you think that moment that you felt that love, do you think that was a moment you felt the purest love?
Oh yeah, because there was no condition to it. There was no shame, obligation, or feeling like it had to be given. It just was freely given. The forgiveness of my father was not that I felt I had to. It was the effect of healing from working on doing the inner work on my own trauma, that the hatred and the anger and all that I had masked for years was gone completely. Not just in that moment. It was before that moment, but it was like, of course, there's part of me that longed for what could have been. That
Sure.
was the part I cry for the most. But it was, the forgiveness is an effect of you, in a sense, loving yourself in the deepest way to reconnect with the child in your heart, the child that has never left you. And once you do that, there's no price in the world that can be paid to take you away from it ever again, because you're in no matter what your problems are. I say this because nobody's perfect. I'm a human, but having that love reconnected within me told me all I needed to know about what's true. And then I could have the free will and the choice to be able to do what I wanted to do, because truly the only person that could hurt me was myself. I mean, he's on an observable level, he's a helpless man.
Right.
He's physically disabled. He's mentally disabled. His body is shutting down. And me demanding of him to, at the end, to do it. I mean, everybody has to make their own choices, right? I mean, there's not like a formula or a rule book of what you can and can't do or say. But I tell this to people in the most direct way that I can. If you heal yourself, you'll heal other people.
Yeah.
As a natural effect of that, because everybody who is hurting is drawing that energy in, no matter what your mindset is or your regimen and how healthy you are. If you have negative energy in you, you're going to bring that around you, consciously or unconsciously or both. And most of us do it unaware that we're doing it to ourselves. So when I did that with him, it was just a natural effect of the healing. And it gave me just a greater perspective on life. It gave me enough strength to understand that what is really important about children and parents is that parents who are willing to die for their children those kids are the most lucky, because their strength is so strong. They were loved so wholly and so solidly. There's nothing that can break them. Truly, there is nothing that break them, and not because they have an ego. It's not about having an ego about how great they are. Right. It's just they're secure in here, and love is given, and it's effortless. It just comes out of them. And if you imagine a world where we had the majority of human beings, if not all, one day, who had this awareness of this beautiful responsibility that is in front of them, with the sacredness and beauty of that child right in front of them, that everybody saw how precious and amazingly beautiful that child was, and the responsibility to raise up that child to be even greater than you, with all of your knowledge and wisdom, through the reflection of your time and the faults and the things that you've overcome. You put all of that energy into this beautiful life force that's going to become even greater than you. That is amazing. That's what we should all be doing. It's not the opposite, which is weakening our kids because of our own issues that we've been growing up with as children, in such a way that we justify it. And we do it through denial. We do it through our excuses that we run through. We do it through, well, my child did this to me, and
yes, and my child should do this and they should do that. And yeah.
And it's not, this is not about condemnation and judgment. Yeah. This is really what unconditional love and forgiveness is about. And to get there is a path. It's not like, okay, go ahead, Now you got to forgive them. And that's what I don't like about modern day therapy is it's all about, you've got to forgive them, but they don't teach you how to heal.
Healing is everything.
So you got to swallow it and put that quote, that was in the past,
Yeah.
but not really explore the real feelings that you had. And so what you're doing is you're getting further and further away from the child that is inside of you that's been silenced.
Yeah.
And needs your love more than anything else so that it has a shoulder to cry on. And
Yeah.
as an adult, you can give that to yourself because that little girl or that little boy inside is hurting and so desperately wants to be loved. But when you do that, when you love them and you find that way back into your heart with the little boy or the little girl in there, there's a caring that starts to come through in you.
Yes.
And it grows and it grows and it grows over time. And it gives you strength to do things that you never thought you were capable of.
Yeah.
You don't have the fear of judgment or attack people that attack you. You're not susceptible to others who project onto you their own problems, and you have to get in there and argue and respond, which is, you know, it's a feature today of social media, right?
Sure. Yes.
Right, because everybody's got to defend themselves,
Right.
and everybody's right because they all have opinions. We all have opinions, and we all think we're right, but it's about dialogue and conversation and trying to learn from each other. It's like, why do you see things this way? Why do you see things this way? And then there's the truth, right? And somewhere all of that, we're trying to get to the truth. Because if we don't get to the truth, then we're just going to hold our position and watch the whole thing fall apart and let these other people who definitely don't hold it, they hold their position very firmly and they're going for it. They're going to take over. Sorry, I just kind of like bringing it back to that conversation that we were having earlier.
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask you, what is love to you? Because what is love to you? But then I want to just, you know, because we're talking for, you know, we can go on, and I'm so grateful, and I have time still. But I want to know what love is to you. Like, what does it mean to you? And then, how can we bring it all back so that we can, you know, we need those children that you're talking about, if we can give them that kind of love.
Yes. I tell like people today, what can I do? You know, you hear about the horrors of the world. Every single child that you come in contact with, every single one of them, you see them outside, they're not your own. Give them love.
Yeah.
Give them a smile. Give them a hello. Doesn't matter what the response is to that kid, you're a connecting point. You don't know what that child's going through, what it's living through. Your energy that you're sending to them, they're unfiltered, most of them, even the damaged ones, they're very unfiltered, so they can respond much faster. They can snap back a little bit more. And when I looked back at all of the people that had helped me in my life, in the moments that were there, that's what it was that changed my trajectory away from all the horrors that I could have become. I saw in people in LA, I saw similarities. I saw similar paths that I could have taken down roads that would have led me to death, led me to addiction, would have put me around some really bad people, more so than I already was just by being there. But this thing about love and it being unconditional, and how there's nothing you have to do other than just become more aware of what you're doing, rather than running through your day as a routine. And I got to do this and this and this, and being all about your thoughts, all about, you know, getting somewhere, as though it's like, you know, life is a destination. It's not. And Alan Watts said it perfectly. The musician doesn't play the last note of the song to get to the end. He plays the whole symphony, and it's the pleasure and the enjoyment in between all of that, with each and every note as the piece goes on. So what I tell people is this: the outside world has lost meaning. It doesn't matter what side of the equation you're coming from, what dimension you measure it by. To everybody right now, nobody wants to live this way. Nobody. Doesn't matter what you know. Nobody wants to live like this. The only people that do are crazy. Okay? We all want to get out of this hell. But the only way that we can do it is not by destroying the system or fighting it, because that's an external projection of the internal. You have to go within yourself, really work on this person here. To get to that, what is unconditional love? Unconditional love is facing the truth first.
Yeah.
Truth is what will set you free. So you have to have an honest conversation with the person in here. The second thing, and you don't stop.
No.
People go to that Tony Robbins seminar and they're like, woo, yeah, cheerleading. And it's not, I'm not saying that these are bad, but it's not an event.
It's constant and never-ending improvement. It's constant, never-ending stuff.
That's the key. Because if you're not improving, stop what you're doing and try something else and keep learning.
Right.
But it's about taking, I mean, in the practical sense, your job. You know, if you're a computer tech specialist, an attorney, a doctor, a lawyer, whatever, or a mechanic, take all of your skills that you do in your job really well and turn those skills on yourself. If you do analysis well, if you do diagnostics, if you have to do research on something, research yourself, research the mind, research the body. You're going to come at it from a totally different angle from the next person. It doesn't matter. It's whatever speaks to you. Start somewhere and keep learning and keep trying, because you're going to have moments that set you back, but it's like those who keep walking one foot in front of the other. I used to not believe this. I just thought it was all like happy talk. No, it's not. You don't know where your destination is going, but if you plot a direction better than the one you know today, it will continue to get better. It continues to get improved. So the love part of it is timelessness. Yeah. The love that you find is in the present moment. It's not a future and it's not a past. It's right now, what's in front of you. And the more you do that, whatever you do, the more life begins to change for you, because you're enjoying it every step of the way. It's not a future state of grinding through it and then eventually you'll meet the right person that'll change your life. No. I tell people all the time, it's like, if you're in a relationship and you're cheating, what are the odds that you're going to find a really great guy who's going to sweep you off your feet and give you all the romance and the love that you want and desire that you're not getting in your other relationship? Odds are very bad. You'll meet somebody who is vibrating at the same level.
That's right.
And we kid ourselves. I mean, I know this is all, it sounds basic, but we're in a time where we need training wheels in a sense. And that's not, we're going to look back on this time, if we make it, and I think we will. There's a lot of reasons to be hopeful. Number one, we're having this conversation right now. And this is something that probably wouldn't be possible 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. If it was, it would have been on the fringes.
Right.
Our consciousness is changing. Yes. And human trafficking is a symptom of a much bigger problem, which is child abuse, because it creates child abuse in order to make it possible. It creates the perpetrator, it creates what will be potentially the victims of human trafficking. You know, when I did that video 2 weeks ago, I was talking about how they can offer them something. They offer these girls and these boys. We should talk about boys too.
Yes, please.
Boys are preyed upon in Hollywood probably more, if not, well, equally, if not more than girls.
Really?
Yes. But it's not just in Hollywood.
Right.
It's everywhere. And there's so many layers to this thing, but let's get down to like the real cut right through it. That person who's a pedophile was molested as a child, period.
Yes.
It's not a choice. It's a choice to you and I. It seems like a choice to you and I, but it is an effect of their environment, which is not an excuse. I'm not giving them an excuse for their behavior against children, but to understand that the reason why that pedophile identifies with a child as opposed to an adult is because all of the adults in that child's life were damaging to that child. And so it seeks out the innocence and the vulnerability in another like it. It's no different than a gang member going, okay, what creates a gang member? In the home, there's not a family. So it goes and seeks and finds its own family. We are beings, we're thinking of this in terms of thoughts and choices. We're beings of energy, frequency, and vibration. And we take the shape and the form of whatever structure is around us. It gets really crazy when you start to consider that our consciousness is reflecting and creating and manifesting this reality. Our unconsciousness is what created and manifested the child abuse system that we live in. And this is a problem that we have to face, because if we think that by getting rid of all of these bad people and locking them away, that we have solved that part of the equation, we're kidding ourselves.
No.
We truly are kidding ourselves. The reconstruction of society must include, absolutely positively must include, laws and a society that protects all life on this planet, starting with children.
Yes.
Starting with children. If we are going to leave and roll the dice and wait till they hit 18 to be legal in the system, you are begging for us to come right back to where we are right now. Yeah. And worse, because the level of technology that we have today is beyond nuclear and anything else going forward, and those people running our structures of power. This is not about the structure, guys. This is about the inhabitants of that structure. The people, the character, the content of their character.
Right.
Because they can't create, psychopaths and sociopaths, this is a feature, they can't create anything. They can only muck it up. They can inhabit something and with fear control everything, but they can't create anything. They can only create the false illusion, and then ultimately it collapses upon itself, but it takes everybody else down with it. It's a small microcosm of that. Look at the Fry Film Festival or the Fry Music Festival documentaries on Hulu and Netflix. That guy is a sociopath. He's a pathetic person, but he is a sociopath, and he created this festival, and he ended up bankrupting everybody by lying. He wanted it to be true, but ultimately he wanted to scam everybody. Right. So this is where we have to get strong within ourselves, because we cannot be susceptible to the dictates of following other people, including me. You don't need to follow me. You don't need to follow you.
Nope.
You need to follow yourself and whatever relationship with God that you wish to have, which is personal.
Yes.
It is not dependent on you following Trump, following Obama, believing it's all bullshit. Whatever it is, it's not going to solve the problem. Your worry, your anger, your fear, your, hey, I'm waiting for a savior. No, it ain't going to happen, guys. There's the political side, there's the corporate side, and then there's the human side.
Yeah, and how do we unite everyone in love and compassion?
Well, the first issue is this human trafficking issue, which the world is waking up to. It is the Achilles heel of this whole entire thing, because no matter what angle you come at it, when you get down to children, there is a dividing line right then and there, and they don't have any ground to stand upon. I tell people this all the time. They go, well, what do you think about all this? I say, okay, I'm going to play like I'm Disney for a second. Disney, you can go online and see the multi-billions, not just the money they have, the industries that they control. This is beyond Disneyland, and it's beyond media. They have their hands in multitudes of industries. Now, that would be fine, except here's the thing. You got 6 media companies that pretty much control most of the news and information in the world. On the human trafficking issue, what are they doing? 2016, Amy Robach, hot mic moment, talks about her frustration over not getting to tell the Jeffrey Epstein story, for which she had everything that Virginia Giuffre had brought to her. They had been working with her for months. She had been out in the shadows for 12 years. They were working with her for months to gather all of this evidence up. It named names. It told everybody what happened when. The lawyer of her said, when all is said and done, Jeffrey Epstein will become known as one of the most prolific pedophiles in all of human history. And they buried that story so that they could have access to the royal family. That is on camera. That is undeniable. And you look at that lady's face, and she has no remorse for the victims. She's disappointed, frustrated, and pissed that she doesn't get to tell the story for her own career advancement. And she is still to this day working at ABC News.
Oh my God.
It's not about Amy Robach. It's about the higher ups who killed that story because of who it implicated and the fallout from that and what other questions it would raise. If I'm a media corporation and I have a growing base of consumers who continually, from Me Too, okay,
Yep.
to Epstein's arrest, now to Maxwell's arrest, are raising more and more questions that I'm going to call it 100% face value. Let's say it's all conspiracy and it's hyperbole and it's exaggerating, it's total BS. They're not saying a damn word to debunk it. Number one. If I'm the owner of that corporation, I come out and I say, we are hearing from our consumer base of the people that consume our children's cartoons and content and all of our movies and all of our music industry stuff, and there are raised concerns because there's evidence out there. People are using evidence, but maybe they're exaggerating. We're going to open a full investigation to debunk all of these claims. And if we find that there is somebody in our industry that was doing this to kids on any level, we're going to turn them over to law enforcement and they're going to get a lifetime ban. They're never going to work in this town again. They're not doing any of that. Wayfair didn't do any of that. Wayfair put out a statement within an hour that said all the prices are consistent, they're justified, and it's like, whoa, hold on a second. You just had people looking at pillows that were $10,000 that had kids' names who were on missing children lists. And you're not even addressing that. You're not even going to do an investigation to find out how that happened on your site. You're just going to put it off to say these are independent company or independent sellers. It's like a disconnect. But what the problem is that this is inhabited. It's been around us for a long time. These people thought they would get away with it. They never thought that for most Americans and even people in the world that would look in this direction and see that all of the jokes that they've made on social media over the years about pedophilia would ever connect to Me Too and Epstein. Because Epstein, you got to remember, Epstein got off in 2008. Alex Acosta had a criminal case on him. Alex Acosta's name's always put out there as a sweetheart deal. I tell anybody, go look at his press conference, for which the media did not cover, in the Q&A, and he will tell you that he wrote a criminal referral for this man, and it went to the higher ups, the higher up attorneys at the DOJ, and they changed it in the 11th hour so that he didn't have to serve any time. And once Jeffrey Epstein in 2008 saw how justice worked in this country, do you think he became less or more emboldened to do what he wanted to do? Did the people in Hollywood who were connected to him become less or more emboldened to do what they wanted to do when they saw how justice worked in this country?
Yeah, because they could do it. Yeah.
So the solution to all of this is this.
Okay.
I mean, because really this is what is needed.
Yeah, and I want to also ask you, tell me what's needed, and then I want to ask you, if before we have to go, if we can, it's 7:20 already, that about what President Trump, what is happening and what is being so, and we know. Go ahead. So
what is needed from people today is you need to start speaking the truth everywhere.
Yeah.
I am. I got to a certain point where I said, screw it. I'm not going to sit here and try to make nice. It's not about not making nice. I'm not going to sit here and pacify the elephant in the room that is staring right at us and sit here and go, these people covered up the crimes of children and you are believing them for medical and health advice. These people covered up the crimes of children, and you think they're telling you the truth about any issue that they cover? Honestly, I'm serious about this. If they're doing this to kids and they're allowing it to happen and they're covering it up, what do you think they're doing to us? I'm serious about this. This is where we have to start, like, stop the BS that we're doing with everybody and unite together on this one issue. Yeah. If we cannot bring ourselves together, line ourselves up with all of our differences that we have and all the division that's being stirred and created by these people, the very people that cover up the crimes of children, will sell you the movement of Black Lives Matter because they can weaponize it and use it to divide the country. They're using that to divide the country while being completely silent on human trafficking of kids. Period. End of story. And I tell people, go to the open source information. There are nests all over this country, and they're being cleaned up. But as I said, getting rid of all of this does not make the fundamental issues go away. It's got to be, the answer has to come from us. The conversations have to come from us. The truth must come through. In the era of bullshit,
the truth.
Whether you see Trump is bullshit or the media is bullshit or both is bullshit, the only way out is truth. And the truth is what will set us free. And the truth does not have sides, by the way. The truth does not have sides. So if your arguments are my position versus your position, and I'm right and she's right, ain't going to work anymore. It's not. That time is the old system, which all of us were programmed to believe in, and we're left arguing over the past that doesn't even exist while these people are planning the future for us, by the way.
Terrific.
So there's that. Now, because this is relevant to your audience and the post you made, I didn't watch the video. I didn't take the position one way or the other. I just started seeing a lot of anti-Trump stuff now. Okay.
Right.
Talking to a guy who was terrified of this man, 100% terrified, and thought we had turned into Nazi Germany, or we're starting to.
Like a lot of people, right?
Like a lot of people. And granted, I had the skill set to be able to go, okay, I like figuring out puzzles, right? Okay, so I just started deep dives, and over 3.5 years, I watched his speeches in full. I watched his campaign speeches. I listened to what General Flynn said on Caravan to Midnight with John B. Wells in 2016. It's all there, what this time is all about. The cult of personality that we have been conditioned through the television, through the media, to believe and project our persona onto someone is why there's such cognitive dissonance right now, because he's the, quote, the ugly face. Trump is the mirror. Whatever you project into him, you will see in yourself and see back reflected to you. That's not to say that, as I kind of tell people, it's not to say that that makes him a saint, and it's not to excuse him, but I've put the evidence out there. The 13-year-old, let's just settle the score on a couple of these things. The 13-year-old Katie Johnson, Jane Doe, which they came out with a lawsuit in 2016 and did that video, is a complete fabrication. Period. End of story. Go look it up in the Daily Mail. They came out, of course, after the election was over with in 2016. We come to find out it was all faked. It was all faked.
Right, by the media, right.
By the media. They don't tell you that. You can go and look at Vox Media, which is from Ezra Klein, who came from the Washington Post. They did an expose on it. It was not sure and all that. The Daily Mail was the one that said it was fake. And I'll just give you one little point about that. She supposedly filed a lawsuit, had to refile it the second time. Do you know who represented her?
No.
Lisa Bloom, Gloria Aldrich's daughter. All right, now, some of those people don't know what does that mean?
Right.
Lisa Bloom was publicly on Twitter telling Tara Reid, who had credible evidence for which was acknowledged that Joe Biden had sexually assaulted her and had corroborating evidence and alibis. And she told her, I'm sorry, Tara Reid. We have to elect. Joe Biden is a little touchy. We know that, but we have to elect Joe Biden. These people are full of shit. They don't care about women. They don't give a crap about women's rights. They are false prophets, every single one of them, because they cover up the crimes of children when it suits their needs, and they fabricate it on the other side. Trump, with all the women that he supposedly assaulted and everything, I knew one of them. She was an actress. She got paid to put that out there. The 16 women, how they felt. Look, I'm not telling you this guy is clean. I don't know him personally. I'm just telling you on one side of the equation with the mainstream media that covers up the crimes of children is not telling you the truth about him. You're going to have to do the work yourself, period. And they will do it not just to him, they'll do it to anybody. It's just that he is the perfect boogeyman to make the whole thing that they're trying to do work. Your hatred of your father projected onto him, your hatred of men, your anger, your violations of your rights. I get it. I totally understand why it happens. But I don't have to like a guy to know who my enemy is. If he was not here right now, we would not have Harvey Weinstein. We would not have Epstein. We would not have Maxwell. We wouldn't have the Me Too movement. We wouldn't have anything.
Right. It's so true.
Hillary Clinton, this is a world-class sociopath. World-class. And when the whole thing comes out, and it will, I tell people to go to Corey Diggs' website. She's a wonderful woman. She's dug into Trump too.
Right.
But she will tell you, you want to know what Hillary Clinton and those people, and it's not Hillary Clinton. She's a servant,
right,
to the powers above. But it's beyond comprehension. Everything that you see imported into this country here with the abortion programs and everything that creates death is done in third world countries first. All of it. Bill Gates gave out a wellness shot in India, turned out to be an HPV vaccination, killed a lot of people. They sued the shit out of him. And you can't find an article anymore on Google because they've erased it from history.
Covered it all up.
Yeah.
Well,
anyway, I know it's a lot, but I just wanted to say, and here's the thing. Bring real criticisms, not a story that you've been told, like a bedtime story that Rachel Maddow has imprinted into your head.
Right.
The racism, Charlottesville, that's the biggest one. Go to the actual clip, not the one that they edited down. He condemns neo-Nazis. It's not even a joke. And I saw that with my own eyes, and I got a fundraising letter from Nina Turner and Bernie Sanders right then and there. And I said, what the hell are you all doing? Like now you're like, please show me. I just asked them in the email, please show me what I didn't see. Show me what you saw that I didn't see. And from there on out, I was like going, my God, they create everything. They fabricate everything. They do character assassination. It's like I'm going, what is the truth? This is a guy who signed executive order the moment he got into office on human trafficking and went after, and I saw the list from the Treasury Department of over 1,600 pages of companies they shut down and seized who were involved in the trafficking of children. They shut down Backpage, for which later those two guys were prosecuted because they were allowing young children to be sold on that website. And you know who was defending Backpage? The Women's March was defending Backpage, saying that sex workers have rights and this violates, totally ignoring the kids.
It is. I know. That's what I was so upset. I'm like, that's what everyone was ignoring about the kids. That's what like the people that were against what we were talking about on that thread, just the thread that I posted. It's just, I don't understand, because this to me is where the kids have to come first. Our kids have to come first so that we can help raise them in a loving environment so that they are loved and that they do not turn into diabolical humans that do bad things. And
what we do among the least of us, we're doing to ourselves at all times.
right.
And that includes the poor. That includes all of those that we look down upon and despise. Those are our brothers and sisters. In Mexico, they have the PRI, the cartels, Nixium, which was the sex cult. They were all integrated. They were trading people from Epstein Island into Nixium to brand them and have them re-abused and re-traumatized. This was a whole network of people who all knew each other from different walks of life. The Attorney General in New York covered this crap up. Christian Gillibrand's father or stepfather was deeply involved in Nixium, supposedly tried to get out. She denies all of it. This is the senator of New York. I mean, guys, this is not about Republican and Democrat. That's a false illusion of reality. This group of people was there to keep you all contained while they covered up all of the crimes. And you're going to find out very soon with this FISA-gate, this Russia-gate thing. This was just the first of about 20 investigations that are going on right now, because these people were coming after every single one of us. I'm not kidding you. You're going to find out that those sealed indictments, which everyone was talking about, they're for the people that committed these crimes. Right. In the beginning, they were all for innocent Americans who had been targeted under John Brennan, who was running an illegal spy operation in the second half of Obama's term, all to sell this idea that Russia had infiltrated the country and was going to, and then we were going to be brought to the brink of war, and we were going to be fighting World War III through Syria as a proxy and the Ukraine with Russia, and we were also going to be fighting through North Korea by proxy war, which would get us involved in China. And it was all to destroy this country, to bring it to its knees. You're going to find this out. I'm not making this crap up. I've looked at it and added it up backwards and forwards. We have all we need, guys. We have all we need. Without these people, we can do amazing things.
I mean, we didn't even get into COVID, but we do have to. Gosh, there's so much here. There's so much that we need to learn from you, John Paul. And I'm so grateful. But what I don't want to leave without talking about, like, so with President Trump, just forget who he is and what he's done, what he's or not, what the bad things people think he's done, as you just shared with us, that are made up. He is making an impact. So he is making a difference and wiping out and shutting things down and shutting down these organizations that are human trafficking organizations. Yes. Correct?
That is indisputable. And I know people cite the Department of Justice. Most people haven't looked at HSI and ICE. That's where they're doing the majority of the prosecutions. The networks of the dark web, they took down the dark web in Brazil. I don't even want to talk about what's on there. They have been taking down these networks systematically, legally, and by force. And no, it is a big deal, because without this, and I tell my friends, like, look, just get on his side to stop these people. Then you can do what you need to do to try to stop him, if that's what you wish to do. But there is no coming back from this time if we don't stop these people. And it's really not just Trump himself, it's all the people around him. And it's not the media people, it's all the people I've gotten to know who are working in the administration and around the administration, who are not big names. They're not the ones on TV. Right. He's got a whole human trafficking task force. Lionel Nation's wife, Lynn Shaw, is advising on it. There's other people I know that are advising on it. They are looking at how we're going to roll this out across the country in police department after police department. When he got all these federal judges in place, this was to begin the prosecution. So even in LA, like my attorney friends, they're seeing an uptick in human trafficking cases going through the courts finally. It's finally starting to happen where we're going to prosecute people according to law and not let these people get off hurting these other kids anymore and making money off of it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm just telling you, if there's one issue, like I said, that everybody can unite around that is not political, it is about the safety and well-being of our children in all dimensions of reality that we deal with. This human trafficking issue is a symptom. President Trump, I've watched carefully, and I don't have to like him or be friends with him or, go all in on MAGA to know what we're dealing with. And I just look at one side of the equation. I feel like I'm like Owen Wilson at the end of Wedding Crashers, who's talking to Claire. He's going, look, you don't have to marry me. Just don't marry this guy over here.
Yeah. Just
maybe
please.
give me a chance, but at least don't marry him.
Yeah. That's it. That's what I was, and like on the post that I made the other night, I was saying I had this feeling when I voted for him. I didn't like him. I didn't want to. I was like, oh, two horrible choices. I didn't know any of this, but I knew in my soul there was some reason that he was coming into presidency. I knew when Me Too movement happened, I was like, oh, this is the beginning. This is it. This is showing up. He's showing up as that so that this can happen and they can attack him. But it's gonna unravel. All these other things are going to happen. That's gonna, that he's standing up for and that he's making an impact. And that's and that he has his organization and has this ability that is doing the work right now, doing the work. And I'm not political. I don't dive into that. I just want what's right for humanity and our children. What is happening is beyond. I know, I don't even know the half of what you know. I could barely watch it. Let me talk about your movie, A Child's Voice, which I started to try to watch. And everybody, please go on Vimeo and I posted it in the information here, and get John Paul's movie and support the movie. I could barely watch it. I have to wait until I'm surrounded by people. I was alone trying to watch it. I couldn't. It is unbearable what's happening.
Yeah. It is. And I want to just invite people that may not know, about the depth of all this. Look, you don't need to dive into it in order to understand what's right and wrong. I don't recommend it because you'll have sleepless nights. You'll kind of like yourself. You have compassion. You have empathy. Our love and what we do in our own lives for ourselves and each other is more powerful than all the darkness in the world. I promise you. It is. We are on the brink of discovering the beginnings of discovering what we truly are. Yeah. Not our labels, not our identification, not a doctor, a lawyer. What are you as a human being? What are you really? Yeah. There's science that points to, and not hypothetically, points to facts that say all of what you are is greater and more than what you've been allowed to know by the people that have run this whole thing.
Yeah, yeah.
They have to have you believe that you are less than yourself in order to make the whole thing work. And it's not them telling you that. They'll tell you all the niceties of things, but they make you dumb through the education system. They make you poor. They're going to make you weak through the health. I mean, all the programs that they have are not designed to help you. They're designed to profit and commodify human beings, period. But that does not mean that that's all of what you are and all of what this world can be. And when you're talking about A Child's Voice, there is a lot of disturbing stuff in it. We didn't glorify any of we probably did it in the most deft way possible, the most delicate of ways, and we put it behind a love story and a beautiful message, I think, at the end, as about the awakening of the child in all of us, and parents who unconditionally will stand up in the face of this horror in love with courage and say, I will help you.
Yes.
That's really what it all comes down to, is I will help you. I will pledge to help you. Speak the truth as you know to be. Light this world up with love. What I would suggest, if people wanted something to do today that they feel that they could do right now,
Yes.
I would say call the person that you haven't talked to in a long time and tell them how much you miss them and love them. Write to the person that made your life so much better because of something they did in the past when they didn't have to, and they helped you as a child. Go on, do a live stream and start talking about the beauty of this world, and your lived experience is the most valuable asset that you have in order to buttress yourself against
Yes.
all the insanity that you're going to see. Is to know yourself and be aware of yourself so much more than you already are today, that this world will begin to change. It really will. I'm not just like, hey man, it can. No,
No.
the change starts within you. If
Self-awareness.
this
Yes.
guy here, 10 years ago, I'm still parts of the same person I was, but I'm on a path that I can see a future that is brighter than the one I've ever known. And when I see all of this horror in the world, I don't have to focus on it because I can see the beauty from that darkness. By knowing the darkness is there, I can see the beauty that much brighter and
Yeah.
know that it's a moment or two away from the whole world coming together, not in the way that they want us to, but in the one that is our divine birthright from the
Yes.
moment we are conceived and come into this world. And you can be anything you want to be, but we've got to start with the foundational principle of what all of us are, which is children of God, and we are divine. We are born divine. And from divine love that we give our children through our parents, they will become these beautiful divine beings that will continue to radiate light out into the world on a level that we have not even begun to experience, but we are going to do it.
Yes.
There is nothing more powerful than the voice that you have to speak into existence what is true. And where we go with that, what we can do with that power is beyond what we can see today. But I promise you, it's going to happen because everybody wants it. Everybody wants to be loved. Everybody's dying to feel love. And my God, if this time didn't teach us what we're missing out on, we're in trouble. If we can't figure that part of the equation out, what we're missing out on. This time is where we take back humanity and
Yes.
we chart a new way forward in this world. And
Yes.
that's what it's all about, I think.
Yes. Elevating love consciousness. That's what I'm about. That's what I hope. I think a lot of people here we want and need to elevate love consciousness and humanity in our children, in each other. Smile, give love, be love. I say, be the love in the world you want to see, right? Like
Yeah.
be the change, yes, but be the love in the world you want to see. Let's do that for each other and for humanity. And as we rise, the darkness has to go, right?
Just gets smaller and smaller. The more light you put into the world, it retreats into the shadows further and further away. It really
Yes.
does.
And
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No,
And then we gotta wrap it up. And I could.
No, I know
just
you got to wrap it up. I'm just happy. Listen, I want to just whoever stayed on this and whoever see this,
Yeah.
I really appreciate the support and care for this issue. It is not about a filmmaker. It's not about a movie. It's about what you wish to do. What kind of world do you want to see?
Yeah.
And you go and you create that world. And if all of us do that part and we use our creative juices from that love within ourselves, my God, the world will change much faster than you know today.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so with you, 100% behind you, John Paul. Thank you. Is there any last thing you want to recommend people do? I think you gave me the document and I posted it here that tells people steps they can, correct?
Yeah, the document you're talking about is a Google document that I put together. It was all the open source information that I pointed to in my viral video. The video, for the ones that didn't see it, maybe you can post a link to it. It's on my Instagram under no restrictions. But that video, this is the inspiring part about it, which I didn't expect, has been seen by over 20 million people now.
Wow.
And it's been spread all over the world. It's been translated in different languages. I didn't do it. There were just news organizations that did. Latin America right now, India, it's even hit Africa. I mean, we're seeing all these messages from people all over the world that are waking up and appreciative of the information that I put in that video. But more importantly, I just said, seek it out for yourself. To know the truth for yourself requires no belief.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And we ask, please share this message, everyone. Please, this message, this video, because this is so much information. It's necessary. We elevate love consciousness by sharing this important information out there, so we can all make an impact and keep on elevating love.
Yeah.
I'm just, thank you all so much for staying with us. I appreciate you. I will be more than honored, John Paul, if you will come back, because I know there's going to be more to talk about. So thanks again, everybody. Any last words, John Paul?
No, just
okay.
Walk in faith with love in your heart, and the world will change.
Yes, thank you. Walk in faith with love in your heart, and the world will change. Thank you. Bye, everyone.